What's up, scale modelers and spaceflight enthusiasts? Welcome to Model Kit Unboxing and Review. It's your host, Ray. In today's video, I'll be unboxing and reviewing the 1:200 scale replica of the Pathfinder Space Shuttle made by Fantastic Plastic. For those of you who don't know, the Pathfinder Space Shuttle is a fictional second-generation space shuttle concept featured on the TV show For All Mankind, where instead of launching from a launch pad, it launches from a carrier aircraft, making for quite a cool and interesting yet questionable concept. So in this video, I'll be talking about this kit. This is the first time that any model manufacturer has made a replica of this spacecraft, so this should be pretty interesting. It's going to be a pretty long video, so sit back, relax, and let's get this started. So the box itself is a small cardboard box. It's a pretty common type box that you'd see for mailing packages, and it has a colored box art in the front, which is pretty nice. It's very simple, but it's good, and that's very nice to see. The first thing you're greeted with is the instructions, which are a single piece of paper. The first page of the instructions has a bit of information about Pathfinder itself, and here it says it's air-launched off the back of a specially modified Boeing 747. That's not exactly a Boeing 747. That's actually a C-5 Galaxy cargo aircraft, which was originally designed with carrying the first generation space shuttle, but that ended up never happening, and that role was given to the 747. But in this show, it was assigned as the carrier aircraft for Pathfinder, so that's pretty nice. But here it says it's a 747, so that's not exactly accurate. On the second half of the page, it gives you some tips about working with resin, which is the material that this kit is made from, and visual instructions on how to assemble the different parts. This is a pretty simple kit, so there aren't many steps or parts that you need to worry about, so that's very nice. On the back side, you get a basic painting guide. Back here, I don't think there's as much details and specific parts as to how different parts are painted specifically, but it's enough, and there's enough references online for how to get those smaller details, so painting this thing to replicate the Pathfinder accurately shouldn't be too difficult. As you can see right here, this kit does feature landing gear. However, I can just see from there that the gear placement is inaccurate. Once I build this thing, I'll discuss that more thoroughly. Next up, we've got the decals. The decal selection is pretty extensive, and the decals look pretty good. These decals up here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, these aren't actually featured on the Pathfinder in the show. However, these are decals, or not decals, but markings that are present on the real space shuttle, so if you wanted to, you could add these, which is a very nice touch. I'm glad that they included that extra detail. But yeah, overall decals look pretty extensive and detailed. Even the NASA logos are correct, which is a nice touch. The only inaccuracy that I see on here is these red triangles on the docking windows. These aren't present on the Pathfinder in the show. However, these are present on the space shuttle, so I mean, that's kind of an unnecessary detail, but if you wanted them on there, it's cool that they included that option to allow you to do that. However, this is also where my concerns with the inaccuracies of this kit start to come into play. Here you can see that it's 1 to 288th scale instead of 1 to 200 scale like advertised on the site and the box. So that's pretty misleading, and that's kind of a nasty surprise considering that it's advertised as 1 to 200 scale. The next thing you see is a display stand, and this is a two-piece display stand, and it looks pretty basic from first glance. However, I noticed that on the part that joins with the spacecraft, there's no rod or support structure that allows you to join it with the spacecraft, implying that you have to glue your model onto the stand instead of allowing for it to be removable, which that's something that personally I don't like. I'd like to have my models removable and movable around so I can move them around and better for storage. And it should be pretty easy to modify in order to allow for this, but it is kind of a bummer that straight out of the box it's in this configuration. But aside from that, the stand looks pretty decent, and it looks like it should hold up the model nicely. Here's the part you've all been waiting for. This is the parts selection of the spacecraft itself. So in these bags, these are the smaller parts like the stabilizers on the wings, the engine section, the RCS thrusters, and the landing gear. So I'm going to talk about these later, but this is the central focus. This is the body and the wings of the spacecraft. It looks decent. It's not the most accurate thing in the world, and I already see an issue with it, so I'll point that out shortly. However, my main concern with this was the size, and this is 100% undersized. And I made this determination through a bit of comparison with space shuttles. So, with the way Pathfinder is designed, it's kind of implied that the crew cabin and nose section of Pathfinder is the same as the typical space shuttle. And here with me, I actually have a 1 to 200 scale space shuttle. This is the Hasegawa Hobby Kits plastic space shuttle kit that I built about a month ago. And you can see this is the nose section for it right here. And if you hold the two side by side, you can very clearly see not even the fuselages are the same width. There's a very big size difference. Now on the left is the 1 to 200 scale replica. I also have a 1 to 300 scale replica, which is very close to 1 to 288th scale, like on the decals. So yeah, this kit is 1 to 288th scale. It's not 1 to 200 scale. So they definitely didn't do the size right on there. Moving on, so you can see as this thing is made out of resin, there's a lot of extra parts and flash that are going to need to be sanded, especially this section on the nose here. That's going to be pretty tough to sand, but nothing's impossible. And even the box says this is for intermediate to experienced scale modelers, so yeah, this is definitely not something you'd want to buy as a first kit. There's a pretty good selection of detail up at the front here. There's indentations for the RCS thrusters, all of which are clearly defined, which is very nice. There's a distinct line for the black thermal protection system leading up to the crew cabin, and this is actually not present on Pathfinder. It is present on the first generation space shuttle, but yeah, if you want to get rid of this, you're going to have to fill that with something. But yeah, here's the wing. Wing looks okay. It's definitely too fat up here. The wing on the Pathfinder doesn't extend this far up on the fuselage. It would be a little bit lower, so that's another inaccuracy that I see. Yeah, and here I can see there's a bit of an air bubble in there, so that means that there's air in there, and that's not very good for the structural aspect of the model. Moving back, this is where the engine section is. It looks like it's going to be very tough to attach the flat parts of the engine sections here, so a lot of sanding is going to be necessary. Moving to the other side, everything else looks pretty solid. There's a giant piece of plastic right here. That's going to be a little bit tough to sand. And here you can also see the section of black thermal protection system that's not present on the Pathfinder, though it's replicated here. So that's kind of interesting to see. That's very interesting. Moving up here to the docking windows and the payload bay, everything up here looks pretty solid. There's this random line right here, which I'm not sure why that's there. It should be dividing the payload bay in half. However, it looks like it's dividing the payload bay into fourths. And there's not even one over here to mirror that line, which is kind of irritating for those of us who prefer symmetry. And with the docking windows here, the crew cabin on Pathfinder is a little bit longer than on the first generation space shuttle. However, this is not replicated. This is definitely the crew cabin from the first generation space shuttle. These docking windows would be a bit further back, and the payload bay would start probably a little bit further back on the fuselage. And just in general, this nose section would be a little bit longer if it were to be more accurate to Pathfinder. Here are the stabilizers that go on the wings. These are definitely not the right shape. They're way too wide and fat. I mean, yeah, I guess that's forgivable. It's the only kit of this model out there, so I can't go too hard on it. But yeah, there is a decent selection of detail on there. There's a lot of molded detail, which is nice. You can see on this one, though, something went wrong in the molded detail. They tried to straighten out a line there, which that's definitely going to be hard to fix, this extra line that shouldn't be there. And yeah, that alignment issue doesn't look too hot, so that's this side. And you can also see in the middle here, there's a lot of flash from production. And this is just brittle material, so it'll be very easy to remove. On the other side, though, everything does look pretty good. So that's at least some redemption there. This part carries the main landing gear and the air-breathing engine exhausts. The engine exhausts look good. It's going to be very hard to detach them from the parts set holder here, though, and of course there's a lot of flash too, so I have to be careful with removing these so I don't break them. But yeah, these look solid in terms of their detail. These are also the main landing gear, and these, I'm just going to say right now, these look very flimsy, and I'm not sure that's too accurate. And honestly, I think it was a little bit extra to try and include the landing gear, because there's only one shot in the show with the landing gear being shown, so yeah, it's probably not the best idea to attach these, because I'm not sure if they'll support the spacecraft if it's set on the landing gear. On this section, we've got the orbital maneuvering thrusters, the small engines next to the nuclear engine, the main landing gear covers, the nose landing gear cover, and oh my god, that looks extremely thin. Holy cow. Yeah, I didn't even look at the bottom of the spacecraft. I'll look at that momentarily, but yeah, that looks very small. We have the large antenna, or aerodynamic structure, that's at the top of the spacecraft. This looks okay. Yeah, the engines look pretty solid. But this is the nose landing gear, and yikes, that wheel is very clearly bent. Ooh, that does not look too good. So yeah, landing gear on this kit doesn't look too hot. Here's the engine section. This is the part that holds the nuclear engine in the center and the orbital maneuvering system engines in the back. This is supposed to be a flat surface back here, but it's very clearly not, so it's going to require some sanding. And yeah, it'll be definitely a challenge to attach this to the spacecraft, but I don't think it should be impossible. And speaking of engines, this is the nozzle for the nuclear engine. This is honestly the most inaccurate representation of this engine that they could have gone for. I'm just going to be brutally honest like that. This engine is very inaccurate. This section of exhaust, that's not even supposed to be there. It looks like the steering wheel for a boat got put inside the engine nozzle, which that's not right. And just, yeah, everything about this engine is pretty inaccurate. The only accurate part would be this rear section where the cylindrical shapes take place right here, but everything back here, that's completely inaccurate. Here's a look at the bottom of the spacecraft. Here are the main landing gear sections. This is just, no, I don't think this is made right. If you look at the main landing gear, even if they were to retract, you can see there's not enough room. Just basically, yeah, the doors aren't long enough. And yeah, that's not very well replicated. And this nose gear, this section is way too thin. This thing that you shouldn't have screwed up on, they screwed up on. This is where the nose landing gear goes, at the front of the landing gear bay, even though it's very clearly, and it would be logically placed at the rear of the bay, just like on the first generation Space Shuttle and like the Pathfinder in the show. So yeah, that concludes my unboxing review. Overall, I'm not really too impressed with this kit at all, especially with the size and the inaccuracies it has. But at the same time, even though I'm being extremely brutally honest, this is the only kit of this thing. So if you want a replica of this, this is your only way to go. Unless you want to buy one of those very expensive pre-built resin replicas from Russia, which I did myself before I bought this kit. And this isn't actually this is 1 to 200 scale, even though they market it as 1 to 144th scale. So yeah, sizing with this kit is not very good all around. Well, not the kit, but sizing with the spacecraft. The people still need to get the size right. So, well, we'll see how the build process goes. It's going to be very challenging to get all the details right and sanding off all the issues, but I'm stubborn and I think I can get something to work out. And at the end, I definitely like to talk about the building process and how it went, and to see if I was able to replicate the spacecraft accurately with all the details that I could have. So, yeah, with that being said, if you want to buy this kit and try it out yourself, make sure you have some experience under your belt and make sure you have the right supplies, because a lot of sandpaper and glue and plastic filler is going to be needed to successfully complete this. So, we'll see how it goes. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more spacecraft content and airplane content. I've got way more on the way. And yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. I hope to see you guys in my next video, and see you later.